Jesus is a God of contradictions. Hey, my name is Brian. Welcome to my garage Bible study. Contradictions. It seems like everyone loves to trash on the Bible. Like, oh, the Bible's so full of contradictions. Oh, it's so full of contradictions. There's a lot of difficult passages in the Bible, and some seem to contradict one another. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole entirely today here in my garage, but sometimes we think something is a contradiction because we have to give polar opposite views of the poles to understand the fullness of the truth of God. This is what we see in Jesus again and again and again in the book of John that we're going to spend a few weeks on. Let's start at the very beginning of the book of John, chapter 1, and I'm going to start at verse 14. And here's what it says. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen His glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. The writer of this is saying, hey, we've seen the glory of God. You know who it was? It was Jesus. God Himself pre-existed even before Christmas, even before He was physically born and took on life here on earth for 30-some years. He's actually existed. And it describes Him in a polar opposite way. It says that He is full of grace and truth. Now, I don't know what you think about when you think of grace and truth. I think of two totally different things. Like when I think of grace, I think of giving somebody second chances, giving somebody understanding, giving somebody another shot, giving somebody forgiveness. That's what I think of with grace. When I think of truth, I think of giving somebody the truth. Like, don't you hate when someone says to you, hey, can I give you the truth in love? A little voice inside of me says, no. No, because there's generally a lot more truth than there is love, and oftentimes truth can be a bit painful. Truth is just, it is what it is. Gravity is what it is. When you're falling off of a stepladder, truth is you're going to hit and it's going to hurt. Jesus is both grace and truth, the fullness of those things. You can't pick one or the other. He's the fullness of those things. Let's keep going here. John bore witness about Him, that's John the Baptist, and cried out, this was He of whom I said, He who comes after me comes before me because He was before me. John the Baptist was saying, I haven't baptized Jesus yet as he said this, but man, He's always existed. There again, a contradiction thing. Wait, was Jesus born of a virgin or has He always existed? Both of those things are true. Keeps going. For from His fullness, get that? The polar opposites, the fullness, the polar opposites of truth and grace, the polar opposites of He's always existed and He was born, the polar opposites from this fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth come through Jesus Christ. Jesus says He's not come to eliminate the law, He's come to fulfill the law. The law is all the principles, all the truth that Moses gave. It wasn't just the 10 commandments that are cited twice in the Old Testament. It was basically all of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, which is known as the law. There's portions in there that just give the instructions of God. And many of those things aren't relevant for us now because Jesus fulfilled those things. They were prefiguring or pointing to a need for a Savior. And Jesus saves us because that's part of what the law does. It shows us that we have a need. If there wasn't any law, we wouldn't think that we had any need because I would just be a good person. I would be doing everything. But when the law comes up, all of these things after things, we realize, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Jesus fulfills the law in that He fulfills the punishment that we deserve when we break the law, when we break the 10 commandments. But He also fulfills the things in the Old Testament that aren't relevant anymore, therefore they're not relevant. All the dietary restrictions, He fulfilled those. He lived the dietary restriction fully, and God said, there's no need for any more dietary restrictions. Point is made. Isn't that great news? For those of you who like shrimp and shellfish, and actually mixing shellfish and steak, bacon-wrapped shrimp. Amazing when I've been over to Israel. It's great foods, but the first day is always a little of a culture shock because I go in to have my breakfast at the breakfast bar at the hotel and they can't mix certain things. You can't be drinking dairy. You can't be having certain kinds of cheeses in the same places where there's meats, the mixing of things. I don't understand all that, why God put that in force, but many Jews still follow that through. And I'm just thankful that Jesus had fulfilled all those things and they aren't relevant for me right now. Now, it keeps going here. It says, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Grace and truth. So truth came through him because he's always existed and he's the one who actually gave Moses the law. So he is about truth, full truth, and he's about grace. He's about second chances. He's about maybe letting up a little bit on some of the requirements that we think that a good religious person might do. This is what I love about Jesus. You really can't categorize him unless you're going to categorize him as God, fully man at the same time. That's the right theological definition for Jesus, by the way. If you ever go to seminary, who is Jesus? He's fully God and fully man at the same time. Didn't eliminate his divinity when he came to the earth. He embodied divinity and humanity at the same time. Those polar opposites, we see the fullness of him and the mystery in the midst of those. Most of us are just not comfortable with mystery. We just want to know what the answer is. And we want it to be this, or we want it to be that. That's part of why our country is so polarized. We want to know, are you on the right, or are you on the left? Are you a Democrat, or are you Republican? Are you a socialist, or are you a capitalist? Do you believe in free speech, or do you believe in responsibility with how you use your mouth? Do you believe in this? All of these things come together, and it's like, we don't have to make all these choices. There's elements of all of those camps that I just mentioned that actually can be one, and they can live together in unity and harmony. And the more you think you only have to be one extreme or the other, and you can't see the beauty in the mix of those things, the less fulfilling your life is going to be. Jesus came full of grace and truth. When I stumbled upon this truth, it led me to have my first tattoo. I've got two. My first tattoo right here up on my shoulder. And it's all about grace and truth. It's the yin and the yang of grace and truth hanging together, and it's surrounded by a crown of thorns, because when Jesus goes to the cross, we see fully his grace and his truth. The truth is, you and I deserve hell. That's the truth. The truth is, you and I deserve death. That's the truth. He went to the cross because that was true. And he went to the cross because he's a person of grace. And he didn't require you and I dying. He didn't require you and I dying and going to hell ourselves. He did it for us. That was the grace. God doesn't lessen his standards. He doesn't lessen the truth. He just makes sure he does it on his own, and he pours out his grace for us. That is the fullness of Jesus. Grace and truth. One more verse for us. No one has ever seen God. The only God was the Father's side. He has made him known. Jesus has made God known because he dummy-proofed what God's like. This is just beautiful for me. Jesus is not this rule figure that comes down and just articulates new rules. He doesn't only fulfill rules. He doesn't just make things up that you should do to be a good spiritual person. He's a person who is God. And when you see Jesus, you understand God. God dummy-proofed what his character, what his identity was by sending him Jesus. If he could have sent a Martian to do the work, he would have sent a Martian. We wouldn't have understood it. It wouldn't have dummy-proofed it. If he could have sent a gerbil, he would have sent a gerbil. If he could have just written another book, he had a bunch of books already. He had a bunch of literature. We didn't get it. He dummy-proofed it by taking on flesh and coming to us so we could see the mystery of God, the sometimes apparent contradictions of God, which are not contradictions. They're just the full breadth of his personality and his wisdom that we have a hard time fathoming in our mind. The greatest journey you will ever go on is a journey to understand Christ, to have your life be like Christ. And the closer you get to Christ, the less people will understand you. I've been getting closer to Christ since the day I came to know Christ. And I say things that some people don't like. Sometimes I say things that people don't like because they're just wrong, because I am a human, flawed person. And so therefore, I'm going to say things that are wrong that people understandably aren't going to like. But sometimes I say things that people don't like because they think they've categorized me in this one slot. Wait, you're the gun guy. Wait a minute, you're the poverty guy. Wait a minute, you're the pro-life guy. Wait a minute, you're the anti-racism guy. Or wait a minute, are you the pro-white guy? Wait a minute, are you the... But there's certain things that I could say that you could put me in any of those situations at any time because the truth of God resides in all of those. Stop trying to nail down what you think about everything. Instead, nail down how you can be like Jesus. Because the more you're like him, the more people aren't going to understand you. Because we don't understand people who are truth and grace. We understand grace people, even if we don't like them. We understand truth people, even if we don't like them. But you put those two things together, and you have the image of Christ, the firstborn among creation, and you become like that, your life's going to start taking off. You're going to start understanding God, and people aren't going to understand you. Welcome to what it means to follow Jesus. Hey, we'll see you next time on My Garage Bible Study.